Hello and welcome to Chronicles of the DM, a panel all about interacting with your players and the stories that come with it from the DM's perspective. So I'll have everybody introduce themselves. We're going to start with Dave.
Hi, my name is Dave. I am a part of the Nerd Asylum, and the game that I actually DM right now is It's Always Cloudy in Alexandria, which is it's great. It's a lot of fun.
I can just imagine that. Like, you ever just hear something and you can smell it? I heard that and I can just imagine the whole thing.
And Oresian, we'll go with you next.
Hi, I'm Orson Fells. I am a resident DM for Real Gaming, as well as a player, as well as doing workshops and such on my own Twitch channel.
Very cool. And Vinnie the Troll.
Hi, I'm Vinnie the Troll. I am a resident troll for Real Gaming. Nobody picks on the ladies but me. I am also a dungeon master for them, running one game weekly and writing articles concerning D&D and stuff like that and such. And also running my own campaign for our home game and a Saturday game for some of the fans of Real Gaming as well in the same world. So
very nice.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
So I'm Dungeon Mom Theta. I'm with the Nerd Asylum as well. I DM and I play. The game that I DM is Hoarding Around. It's a Hoard of the Dragon Queen let's play kind of thing.
So much fun.
And we'll move right into our first question. What is a time when your players threw you such a curveball that you had to take a moment to kind of step back and come up with a solution or option for them to be able to continue the story?
I mean, I can start if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
All the time. It literally just kind of happens. You know, you put in a foul, evil entity in front of them that just oozes evil, and my players are like, that's the one. That's the one that's going to help us. And that's what they do. For example, and I'm just going to use Alabaster Forest, which is what I DM for Real Gaming. I gave them the option, and I said, it seems like this entity, which was named Vixel, could help you, which was a giant owl that creeped them the heck out and made them feel really uncomfortable. Or there was this gravedigger who was super helpful and nice and offered to help them. And they chose to go with the giant evil demonic owl to help them. And, you know, I kind of punished them for it a little bit, but
deservedly so, I bet.
Yeah, well, you know, they just aged a bunch of years as part of their punishment, you know, because it was teleporting them somewhere. You make a deal with the devil, you get burnt. And, you know, I'm just like, sure, yeah, let's do it. Let's do this. You all trust the ancient evil owl creature over the helpful gravedigger. And it was just like, let's do this. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Vonry is saying I went from 30 years old to 60 years old. Yes, you did. And she still loves this character. The character that screwed them over.
All right. Anybody else?
For me, it's specific instances, I feel. They have like thrown I've built an encounter and I built something that's like, this is going to take them a full session to deal with, and they're going to go and do this. And then everybody just kind of does something, and I'm just like, all right. Like I had an orc war boss, and he was going to be this big fight, and in the meantime, like the fort nearby was getting attacked by the orcs forces, so it was like they had to rush to defeat this guy, and if they could defeat him in time, maybe they could save the fort, because there's only a couple people there guarding it at the time. So they had to, like, in between turns, like, people might be dying or getting wounded. Yeah, they just did a couple different spells and put him in a position where I'm like, yeah, I mean, you coup de grace him at full health. Like,
what do you do?
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like, they made him, what was it? They made him bow over on all fours and stick his head out.
And then chop his head off.
And then they took his weapon from him, so they just chopped his head off. And I was like, I mean, I can't. he might have X number of health, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense. What you're gonna miss? You rolled an 18 and his armor class is 12 or like 5e. You're gonna hit him.
It also makes sense, right? So you don't want to
Yeah.
punish them. You're not gonna
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they solved the problem. I'm not gonna be like, no, it doesn't work. He has metal
The
neck
fact is-
that protects him. It's like, no, you let them have it. Give
That's
them
when
their
the dragon comes in and lands on top of the tower and freaks everybody out, and he gets to escape. Wait, that's Skyrim. Never mind.
I've threatened that. I've threatened that a few times.
How many DMs haven't pulled out that there's a blue lightning bolt waiting for you if you guys don't get back on the map? Now I'm in my weekend game. I had a situation like that where they just completely went away from all the encounters I had set up. I had them in a city encounter, tracking down prophets of the forgotten gods that aren't spoken of and are dead. But no, they wanted to go over the mountain range as far away from the city as they possibly could to get rid of a ghost that was just hanging around and giving them snarkiness. I'm like, okay, push all that aside. We're going to the frontier. Let's go. But you got to do it. I mean, you can't railroad them into an adventure. So
I have a recording that is me crumpling up my notes and just throwing them over my shoulder.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
I think in general, just as a way to kind of prevent this from always happening, I like to let my players just fill in as much as they can.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely started being a more loose after that whole off map. It's like, okay, let's see what happens from now on. Let you guys do it.
Yep. I even, I'll even go as far as just asking them. I'm like, what's the name of the bakery in the town that you're from? That we're here. That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I always found like in order to keep people on track, I always like, here are 3 options. You can go looking for more, but here are 3. You try to pick one of the 3. If you want to look for more, I can give you more. But very clearly, look.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times if you give the players that sort of nudge, right? Where you're like, hell yeah, you hear these 3 rumors or whatever, they're really very likely to focus on those 3 things and look into them. But it's just along the way they occasionally get distracted. I was just referring to players as James Woods from Family Guy. Just piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. What is that? It's like, you have a world to save. No. There's a piece of candy over there.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay.
I think the first like 7 episodes of my series ends up being like they're still in the capital city that they started in. Like people wandering around, having more conversations. And I'm like, I can't say no. Like, you're in a city. If you want to go here, it's there. Then eventually I was like, all right, we need to. It's like 3 session guys. Like, we need to get on track. We need to leave the city and start the campaign.
It's like with one shots, you just start them right in that action. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. What is the best or your favorite NPC you've had to create in 5 seconds because your party did something unexpected?
Oh wow.
Oh gosh.
I know. I got this one. So, I was expecting my group hadn't really interacted with people so much on the road and like bandits or anything. So I wasn't sure how they were going to react. They found monsters and things, but they haven't found people. So I built this little scenario that they were going to get robbed by these guys and they were going to fight them and they were going to kill them and find out they were cannibals and they were going to have to chase them back to their fort and find the fort and save the people that were there. And then they didn't kill anyone. My people just, they were not murder hobo at all. They weren't concerned about hurting anyone. Everything was non-lethal. And I was like, oh no. isn't gonna make any sense because these guys they're supposed to be like crazy cannibal guys, and so that evolved into okay. Well, I already made the comment that they were wearing like super super tight skimpy leather outfits, like road warriors. And I just invented the leader of the road warriors who was upset by some dealing he had with like a woman in another city who like shot him down. And he's like, I'm going to take men and we're going to fight the oppressive power of women. And we're going to have the road warriors. And we're only going to be men. And we're going to be beefy and powerful and only skimpy leather outfits. And the road warriors were invented because my team didn't react the way I thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, here's a whole different story. They reformed this whole group to make them nice people and led them to be like, they are now great people who are going to do great things. They're the road warriors. And I was like, they were supposed to be cannibals.
So now you have road warriors instead of cannibals. I think that's an upgrade.
Yeah.
100%.
Meals on wheels.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Oh no. The moment of excitement and then just. I think for me, I actually ended up creating an entire like bloodline of Tabaxi because of a character I created in like 5 seconds. Because my players were just looking for a guide through the desert.
Mm.
They're like, we want to look for a guide and we don't want to spend too much money. And I'm like, oh, okay. Here's this Tabaxi. His name's Ayabara. And then now there's been a Kayabara and a Sayabara. Like, and they're pretty interesting. They're a typical sort of, they're more like the Khajiit sort of style Tabaxi, if you will, from Skyrim, but part of a long lineage. And yeah, it's fun making when the players sort of challenge you and they're like, oh, hey, here you go. Come up with an idea now. And you eventually make that a part of your world. Because that's how you know you're like, oh, yeah, that worked. That stuck.
It's awesome. So DMs are often looked at as leaders of a D&D group. How do you solve inter-character and inter-player conflict?
Louisville Slugger.
Inter-character and inter-player conflict. For inter-character conflict, I think it's more of a understanding between the players early, right? Let's talk about this. Do we want infighting? And if infighting does come up, how do we want to handle it? Because it's okay for the characters to argue.
Yeah.
In most cases. But if your group does not want that, then make that clear up front. As for actual player conflict, talk to each other. Right?
Yeah.
Get everybody talking and go from there, because it happens.
Yeah. I mean, Fluffy and I have been playing D&D together for 30 years. So we know each other pretty well. And the group we have now with Crimson and Von Ree and Bell and Aches, and we just know each other so well after decades that the interpersonal stuff, it passes. We get along well, and we get a few bad apples. They get weeded out and have gone by the wayside. As for inter-character stuff, I tell them right off the bat, I don't want PvP. You guys can argue and fight over what to do, but don't start combat with each other. It never ends well, and everybody gets hurt. It's not fun for some people, while others thrill at it, and those people aren't in the game anymore. So you just set some ground rules and be willing to talk, like Orson said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did. I think definitely talking with everybody up front about what your expectations are for the campaign and what your expectations are with them, and said like, hey, we don't do this.
Right.
Like, as a DM, I will not facilitate this. You can work around it and have conversations and deal with your issues, but you're not going to fight.
Right.
If you're going to take something from another player or steal something, if they find out, they're going to know, and they're not going to like you anymore. So you're going to have to deal with that as characters. But combat, absolutely not. We had in my campaign in the very beginning a person who was a very anxiety and panicky druid that just all the time, and she made like this circle of feelings so she could talk to people, and we have continued that throughout the whole campaign. So when someone's dealing with something, or a character is off for some reason, or they're interacting in some way that's not normal, my players now just you need to stop. You need to sit down. We're going to have a circle of feelings and talk about what's going on so we can all be on the same page. And they just do that now. It's like
I thought it was a druid circle path. The circle of feelings druid. What?
Yeah.
But it's great because this one time it facilitated and it really worked well. And then this is part of our group dynamic now, is when there's a problem, we talk. We deal with it because we're a team. We're friends. We're together. Let's do this.
Yep.
And for
Especially
player
initially, make sure it's a group. That conversation. It's just in general. Make sure it's a group conversation.
Yeah. It's not one person talking at the group. It's everybody talking and interacting. Yeah. And I think player conflict, like you said, we're adults. I mean, you have to be able to communicate your problems. And if you can't, you have to be able to convey that you are unable to communicate. If you have an issue, you have a problem, you need to be able to say, I don't want to talk about this, but I can't deal with this, or I can't deal with that. You have to be able to communicate or convey how you feel in some way. And if you're with good people who are understanding or empathetic, they're just going to, back off and say, okay, like, we will deal with this. Like, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. We'll deal with it when we can, when you can. And we're not going to push it.
The other thing to keep in mind too is sometimes people freeze in the face of conflict, especially like outside of the game, right?
Yeah.
So when that happens, what I started doing in Alabaster Forest is just afterwards I say, hey, everybody, how'd it go? Any issues, any problems, please let me know. We talk about this regularly where I'm just like, hey, if there's an issue, please let me know, because it's a pseudo horror game. So there is definitely some stuff going on in there that can be a bit like disturbing. It's like PG-13 borderline R disturbing, but you get the idea, right? So I don't want to alienate anybody. And I say my DMs are always open. If you can't talk to me, you can talk to somebody else that will talk to me, and just like being upfront with my players and letting them know what's going on. Please let me know one way or another.
Yeah, and to kind of tag onto that too is I try to do that, but also at an individual level, because I play with my friends that I play all my games with, and I play whatever video games and interact with, and we have other recordings. So when I'm alone with someone, I'll be like, hey, I noticed you were quiet here. Are you okay with this? And I feel like having that one-on-one helps a little bit, because maybe they might be more comfortable with just you there than everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. That's like if you don't get to see them in the regular, or you're playing games with them, your DMs are always open in Discord and so on. Just send me a chat. We can even video chat about it if you want. Turn off the video and we'll just do voice. However you want to do it, we can do it.
That's awesome. So my next question, have you ever had to scrap an entire session based on the actions of the party in the session that you're in? And how did you handle that?
Yeah. But I never played with them again. Because it was bad. They did something really stupid, and there was like one or two. It was inter-party conflict with people that didn't necessarily like each other in real life, and it they decided to try and take it out on each other in our little virtual space.
Well, that's no good.
Or, our imaginary space, I guess, is not virtual. This is a virtual space, but our imaginary space. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm done. We're not doing this. But that was a long time ago. I think now with a group like that was one of those situations before I had really gotten to the point where I do that session 0. I talk to my players. I let them know what's going on, that sort of stuff. I wasn't necessarily doing that when I was a teenager. Which is why it's important to get that information out there. And yeah, we just not stopped playing together.
I've had parties go sideways on me, and it's like, oh, okay, sorry, I don't have the prep work for that direction. We're going to end here today, and hopefully I'll have it ready for you next time. Early night. Sorry. And then talk about bookkeeping or whatever we need to handle behind the scenes with the game, and answer questions or problems or query. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do research? Just handle the mechanics of it and step away from the role playing if it gets stuck. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was gonna say I had my party seems my because I only DM one group and it's the first time I'm really DMing, and I've only had one time where they were just like, it's like crap. They weren't like, the only thing I planned on them not doing was a thing that they did. Like they captured somebody that was supposed to get away, and they really captured them. Like there was no way this person was getting away without getting killed. And they knew they were going to kill the person, so I was like, well, this changes the next like 5 or 6 planned sessions that I had and directions. Like, all right, well, this whole like 3 or 4 session encounters aren't going to make sense. I have to get rid of that. I can keep some of the stuff for it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Like they're going to get information, they're going to find out more, but they did like the one thing, and you're like, all right, let's do it. I am a very I love improv and just running off the cuff, and I think it's so much fun just to let your players feed on that and be like, give them a little bit, and then everybody starts building more ideas. So I don't have to like end the session, but definitely just give yourself time to be like, how are we gonna do this?
Yeah, it's okay to take a break.
Stall.
Like the time you guys went to the cultists and went, "Hail Tiamat," and I'm just like, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were trying to hide.
You guys were like, we're gonna hide, we're gonna do this, and I'm like, okay, cool, I've got all this planned. And then one person just off the cuff, "Hail Tiamat," and I'm just like, oh my god. What do I even do here? What is this guy's reaction even gonna be?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't have the answer for this.
There seems to be a lot of times there's a lot of pressure on the dungeon master, game master, whatever it is, to just come up with so much just on the fly. And, a lot of times you're on information overload in combat and so on. You're trying to run like 6 different monsters, thinking about what the players are going to do and how your things would react to it. Then you're thinking about plot lines and all this other stuff. It's okay to take a break. It's like, I need to go refill my coffee and just walk away for a minute and think about what you want to do next, right?
I really have to go to the bathroom. Can we just take a quick 5-minute break?
Excuse me, I have to go confer with my spouse, who is also a DM, and get an idea real quick. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
My dog needs to be walked. I'll be right back.
Whatever your excuse may be.
Yep. Just use it, or just say, I have no clue what to do. Just give me a minute.
Yeah.
I think they try to make me take my headset off and walk away for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes
I genuinely think that's their goal.
They're evil.
It's like students picking on the sub. Yeah. Let's see if we can get the substitute teacher to leave the room.
Yeah. I think as a dungeon master that gets to play occasionally, I do that not on purpose.
Sure.
It's like, I'm so sorry that I'm difficult. I'm not trying to be difficult.
All right, so we're going to move on a little bit. DMing takes a lot of creativity, obviously. What kind of advice do you guys have for people who want to DM who maybe aren't the best at being on the spot idea makers?
Prep work. So,
Prep work. Do your homework, yeah.
I think having I started building a list of just names in a Word document, and it's like XYZ.
Yeah. Hey Dave, real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're like breaking up, like you're very robot sounding.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out again.
Yeah.
How's
I
that?
thought I was having a seizure.
Cool. So I started having a list of names in a Word document of like 6 different people and their jobs and their general personality or one line of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like old man who's a blacksmith, old woman who's a blacksmith, old shopkeeper, and then just like 5 or 6 names. That way, if they want to talk to somebody or they want to go here or go there, you have something you can pull that's not the top of your head.
Mm-hmm.
And having maybe just a list of items or a list of things that just maybe prompt ideas in your head as opposed to just or something on the paper.
Yeah.
Maybe like the names of 2 or 3 different locations that it can be literally anything. You don't have to put a thing to it. You can just be like, this is the Alabaster Trail. There's a mine there. It's a mountain. Okay, trail, mountain, forest. It's a mine in the mountain with a forest. That's it. And you've created a spot where they can go.
Mhm.
And having just like little prompts or thoughts or locations or whatever just written out that you can just glance at definitely helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take my workshop. It'll help. I do a lot of brainstorming for my sessions. Not necessarily about where I want the players to go, but about the things within it. And if players give me something, I will brainstorm about that as well. So if my players mention something about something from their past or a particular character, things like that, I will take a quick brainstorming session about that thing so that if I want to bring it into the campaign, I can do so just like that. One of the other things that I really like to, practice everybody. If you, the more games you run, the more comfortable you're going to get running.
Yep.
And that's just it. Just run for people. Do it. You can find people. You can go pretty much anywhere on the internet and say, "Hey, anybody want to come and play a game of D&D with me?" And you can get.
Oh God, yeah.
Now that may not necessarily always be the most positive experience, and it's not necessarily the best option for everybody, especially people that are newer, maybe don't feel comfortable. But I feel like as long as you are upfront with everyone about your personal take, how experienced you are, and you're like, "Hey, I just want to run a one shot. I've never run a one shot before. Anybody want to come in and play with me?" I will say this: like I went on Reddit, like almost 2 years ago now, and went to their LFG channel and said, "Hey, I want to run a game of Dungeons and Dragons for people." And I wrote out a spiel about what I wanted to run, and I had over 100 people apply to it.
Yeah.
I did like an interview process. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And
Everybody wants to play, and
do an interview
not enough
process,
people
I
want to
picked
run.
the 5 people that I wanted to play with, and
Yeah.
we're still playing today. So
That's awesome.
you can do that sort of thing. You can pick the 5 nicest people. Be like, "Hey, can you join Discord?" No. Then, okay, sorry for wasting your time. "Hey, can you join Discord?" Yeah. And they come in and they act like a jerk to you. Move on. Right? Find 5 people. Say that you want to run for new players rather than old players. There's a lot going on out there. People like playing games.
I started keeping a sheet running of supporting cast, the way I see it. You know, every time they come into a town and meet the bartender, I'll write down the bartender's name, the name of the establishment. We're playing Malhaven, and it's Thea's character's hometown. And I said, well, what's the bartender's names? And she threw the names out, you know. And, oh, the Minotaur nomadic trader just showed up at the front gates. What's his name? Theseus. Well, Theseus became one of the best NPCs they've ever loved until I cut his legs off. I mean, till the gnomes cut his legs off. That was a fun session. Listen to your players, get input from them, take notes, and practice. You'll get good at it.
Mm-hmm. Practice like anything. It's important.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to be great right off the bat.
Mm-mm.
And
Don't expect to be.
good players will accept that.
To kind of build from this question, how do you guys get your characters emotionally attached to an NPC that you've made?
Oh, definitely ask them about stuff. And then if you ask your players questions, they will give you answers. So if you ask a player, who's someone important to you? If you ask the players, hey, where did you grow up? Did you have a mentor? Did you have somebody that was nice to you? You ask your players questions like this when they go places or look at things. Then you can say, hey, that person that owned that bakery that, you know, hid your family away from the marauders that ran through it. This is just something I'm coming up with off the top of my head. Yeah, they're here. They're now part of the city council and they're asking for your help. That sort of stuff, that goes a long way. They're like, wait a minute, that character that I told you about on the spot is now a character in the campaign? Yeah, it is. And that goes a long way. Because if
get
one
them involved,
invested, almost all the players get invested.
Get them involved in the NPCs' creations and backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
and they will stick to them.
100%. They buy in.
Yep.
Yeah, I found for me, if I created a character that I needed to be important, I didn't realize how important the character was going to be until a little bit afterwards I made it. And I kind of just created that reliance on the group. Like someone who's nice, someone who's looking out for their best interest, and someone who wants them to be successful. And then have them rely on the group. Like if they save somebody and the person's like so thankful to help them and to be like to be involved with them and then have them continue on with the story, that person, they remember, hey, we helped that person and they were really thankful, and have them approach the group and work with them and say, hey, I value you as a person. You've helped me immensely. You've created my life easier. You've saved me. You've saved someone that I care about. You put your value that you put in your players through a character. I feel like that kind of helps too for characters that you just make on your own. Then again, I also just really like wholesome characters.
All right. So this one is kind of just like an open question: module or homebrew? And what would you suggest to first-time DMs to start off with?
Let's start with a module. With a one-shot module.
Yeah, 5th edition has one of the best starting kits I've ever seen for any TTRPG in Lost Mine of Pandelver. So that makes it that part is really easy, but I think a lot of times new DMs really don't want to run a module. So I think you start off with something like Lost Mine of Phandelver and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. It's just to learn the structure of what the DM's going to need in front of them. you start with a module that's printed. It gives you an idea, and then you can expand on it to change what suits you when you're doing your own.
Mm-hmm.
I think DMs are creators at heart. I have altitis. All my friends know that when I play video games, I can't stop creating characters. As a DM, I can create all the characters I want.
Yep.
And if I have story hooks that I just can't finish in my head, I put it in front of the players and let them help me write the story and finish it. Which works very well for me. So, homebrew, it's great. And I think that's where all DMs eventually go. But some just like to run the mechanical preset,
It'll also depend on system too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of systems out there now, like obviously, D&D is top dog, but there are so many other systems out there. Like if you look at a system like, I think systems such as the Fate system, and like the Powered by Apocalypse systems do a great job of showing dungeon masters, game masters, MCs, whatever you may call them, how to run games. They're fantastic for it. And they show you, they're also really good at helping you improvise and let your players have player agency very early on in deciding so much about their characters.
Yeah, especially that Powered by the Apocalypse system. Yeah.
Yeah, and Fate, I mean, you literally make up your own abilities for everything. The players are like, I want to have fire breath. Okay, cool. You're a fire-breathing ninja robot. Nice.
Yeah, same here for me. Definitely module before homebrew. I did a Storm King's Thunder, and we did the first couple sessions were just in the first city and interacting with people, and I figured out, oh, these are how I'm supposed to make sense here. This character, they have a motivation. This is their motivation and why they're doing what they're doing. This makes sense. This is why they're real. This is a person that's talking. And then like I went on to do It's Always Cloudy, but I use the Tal'Dorei manual as kind of something that I could fall back onto to be like, where are they? They're in this place. Okay, let me go back and look. Even though it's not a module, it has places, it has things that it helps me as a DM, especially because how new I am, build more. It's like for my thing, it takes place 20 years after the whole Critical Role stuff. So the world is similar, but not the same. And the players are playing in their world. And if I want to go back and say, oh, this city's gone, I can do that. Or this thing is there, I can do that. And you can do that with any of the stuff for like the Forgotten Realms and all the different stuff out there. Like if you're playing in a place that you're comfortable with or that you have material on, it helps you move things along. It takes away some of the pressure. And I think that homebrew puts on a DM when everything is new and everything is off the top of your head. I can only imagine how difficult that would be to then start to learn to DM while you're starting to build for the first time. It doesn't seem practical.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, some people just slide right into that role and are instantly comfortable too.
Yeah.
So definitely understand your limitations. I think either way, we're in a really good spot right now with 5th edition, like I said, with Fandelver as well. Like it's just such a good starting module. And it's simple, it's easy to understand, it's incredibly cheap, and it gets you through that first. It holds your hand a little bit and lets you know what to do and when, and it gets you through the first DM jitters pretty easy.
That's awesome. So we're gonna move on to questions because I don't have any more, but Joe has a really good one. How do you bring a player that likes to play the socially distant and awkward loner type character who dislikes engaging in social encounters into a story and connect them to the world and the other characters?
I got this one.
I'm reading the question again.
Yeah, it's a long question. And you can go ahead and answer it while he's reading.
How do you
the
deal with
question.
an edgelord? Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the shortened version of it.
TLDR, how do you deal with an edgelord?
I mean,
I have found the best way to do this. Have them make a wholesome character. Make somebody that comes from a good background. Their parents are alive and happy. Their parents have a good relationship. There are siblings that love them and support them, and their family is great, and they have no excuse to act that way. And remove the tropes and the things that they go on normally, and put them in a position where, hey, how would a normal standard person with a good life act? And even if they act a bit more like a loner or like a more socially distant person, they don't have that, like, but my family was murdered to help me. Like, it's not there to bring them down. They don't have that back thought to say, like, this is negative. Because I find people who do that tend to just have a negative perspective, maybe on life or just things that's going on. They try to take a more negative perspective, and to make people have more wholesome, which I do with now. All my characters in Cloudy are mostly just, they're from wholesome backgrounds because it's fun. It's such a weird thing to have a normal, happy, good person, or just moderate person. They're not good, but become an adventurer. They don't do that. So when you put people in that position, they're like, oh, I'm a nice, normal, good person without too many issues. How do I act?
I mean, in cases where you can't really ask them to step out of their box too, because a lot of players, that's what they want to play. If that's what they want to play, that's okay, you know? I think what I would normally, or this is what I do 100% when I have characters that are like that, I ask them what's important to them. They have to ask them what their motivation is. What is important? There's got to be something important to you, right? If there's nothing important to you, then ask them why they're doing what they're doing. Why do they want to be an adventurer? Why do they want to go out in the world? Don't be afraid to ask your characters questions, because when you learn about your players and your players' characters, you can motivate them pretty much always.
Comes down to communication. Get them to talk and open up.
What was that?
I said it comes down to communication. They have to tell you something. They got to give you something to work with.
Yeah,
They
and
can't
if you
just
don't interact, ask them. Just be like,
yeah.
what is super duper edgelord doing over there? You know. But I would definitely not ostracize them in any way either. I wouldn't call them super duper edgelord. I'm just throwing that out there. I would just say, so what is Jameson doing? First name that came to my head. Sorry. What is Jameson doing?
My dad is super duper edgelord.
While this is going on. Oh, I'm going to stand in the corner glowering, staring at them, trying to have fun. That sucks. Okay, make a perception check for me. You notice two shadowy figures come in through the door. They seem interested in your friends. What do you do? Involve them.
Yeah.
Okay. That's some pretty solid advice.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, if players feel genuine sadness or anger at events in the game, do you feel obligated to counterbalance that with good things happening that you didn't plan?
No, but I do talk to my players after the game. Mm-hmm. This happened recently. I was talking about Malhaven and Theseus. And Thea put the idea in my head that when they were going to see the gnomes, that she says, please don't screw up the gnomes like you screwed up the elves. So I knew I had to have something dark happen at the gnome village. And they got there, they were led in with hoods over their heads and magically put to sleep to protect the location of the village. When they woke up, circumstances, they found out that the gnomish elder had an episode in Alzheimer's, and somehow had removed the legs from the Minotaur and was grilling them. And they didn't know if he was dead or alive until they found him. And they were like, how could you? And, they wanted to kill me, and Crimson threatened me several times. And then afterwards, I said, everybody said, yeah, we're fine. That was great. The drama was perfect. We hate you, but we love you. So, and I wasn't going to sugarcoat it, and circumstances, things happen and consequences happen. And we just move forward, and that's a heavy, memorable moment. You don't want to lessen the effect it has on the characters. It just takes away from it and degrades it.
I think there should always be a payoff eventually. But in the moment, no, you go in, and afterwards you talk to your players and see how they are, their headspace is. What's going on in your headspace right now? Do we need to take it back? One of the things that you could do is, if your players are really, really upset about something, and this is just a general advice sort of a thing, maybe run a one-shot, like an alternate one-shot in between, where it's just like they get to just do something for a little while to kind of break up that really heavy session with something a little lighter. If it's really bothering them. But that's, like Vinny said, it's all about coming down and talking to them and see how their headspace is.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, anything to add?
I mean, I haven't really had sessions like that with my group yet. As a player, though, I gotta say, I value darkness with humor. I feel like adding a dumb joke in or something weird going on it doesn't necessarily lessen the situation, but it makes people not be as sad. I don't like people to be sad.
Okay, I will admit, I left them on a cliffhanger. They didn't know what had happened to Theseus. And at the beginning of the next session, in chat, I posted in memorial, warrior, friend, nomad, Theseus, 2019 to 2020. And Sia was pissed as hell, but we laughed about it. She goes, "Don't you dare!" So yeah. I kind of lightened the mood going in, because they didn't know what was going to happen to them until it was revealed. And I said, okay, out of the moment, not in the story. Yeah, I have a dark sense of humor anyway. So that's dangerous anyway.
We just had a situation. Someone died in one of our campaigns, and they were a unique race that didn't make sense at the time. And that was it. And they were done. And the next session started. And I was immediately just like, what the hell is that? And everyone was like, what? And I was like, it's our friend. They're dead. I'm like, the fuck is that? Like, what is that?
To be fair, one of the characters already knew that he was a unique race and was just like, this is this person. I don't understand why you're freaking out.
Meanwhile, my character's just like, the F is that? Are you sure that is our friend? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, but are you really sure? Because it doesn't look like the person. It just, I like balance with dark. I like to balance humor with bad stuff happening. That's how I am with most things in my life, though.
Unless you can't. Like, we had a game where this character, it was a sloth person, got us across this lake, and he left. And we knew that it was like the boat was this living wood boat that he was using his life energy to power. And when it left, he was just holding the rudder. And at the end, the DM is like, oh, by the way, he's totally dead. And we were all just like, why would you tell us that? You could have just left it. We didn't have to know.
He's like, look, you have to understand what's going on.
Like, this is meant to be heavy, but we're just like, we were all devastated.
We're like, we got to the spot. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's great. And he's like, he's so dead. And we're like, no.
I think DM's just like torturing their players at sometimes, though.
Sometimes, yeah. So I tend to run very heavily like narrative games, even with my Dungeons and Dragons games, and I hit the players in the feels quite a bit. And like literally, Crimson told me that she was crying for like a week the one time because of a character that sacrificed itself to save the planet, the universe. And I feel really bad about that sort of stuff. I'm like, I didn't even know. I'm sorry.
Do you also feel like a little good about it? Like, do you feel a little proud of yourself also?
Well, in the moment when my players were crying at the table because of this, because of what happened, I was like, yeah, because I wanted an emotional response. I want them to really feel that moment because it was important. And yes, the space one, Thea. And yeah, so I just didn't expect it to linger as long as it did.
Right.
And that was a really fun and lighthearted campaign overall. However, the end got a little serious, right? Because cyberpunk games and things like that, which is basically what it was kind of cyberpunky. They had to make a choice, and I gave them a choice, and I took that goes along with some of the questions that we had earlier. Is I took her background and I made it part of the story. This is what you said about yourself.
Do you ever find it difficult to do that, to make a player's background part of the story?
Yeah, sometimes. Like, for example, in that campaign, Thea here was a werewolf person, pirate that flew around on pirate ships, similar to like how they did it in Treasure Planet with her brood, right? And then we had a player that was, I'm drawing a blank. Navafi, what was your character? Vonry, what was your character? There was like a Krang the Conqueror sort of situation with my one character who had two heads controlling the body. And they would pop in and out depending on which head was in charge. And like there was a lot. There's a lot going on in that campaign. So bringing them all together and making it actually kind of work was the hard part. But once you get the characters together, I think involving their background isn't too hard. As long as you know what it is. What questions are important.
All right. Well, that's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions? I'll give chat just a moment.
They kind of tag on what Orson was just saying. Something too that I noticed, I didn't know one shop, so it worked well in that instance, but I've always found in a lot of the games that I play, it's hard to get the characters, or even as a player or DM, to be together. Like, you all have a purpose, and you all have a motivation, and getting your characters' backstories and things together, and then going, why the hell do these people want to be together? Like, how do you get people together? And the only way that I found working is immediately off the bat, kind of like what you're saying, like put them in the action, make them have to rely on each other. And that's the only way so far.
I usually preface things with like, you're adventurers. Why are you adventuring, and why are you adventuring together? Like, you want to work together. Why?
Yeah.
I will literally tell my players that.
There you go.
You all figure it out.
My current Sunday campaign, I threw them all on an airship that gets attacked. And they all ended up in the escape boat together. Trying to survive. One person piloting, one person escorting a dead body she's taking to the capital. One was the chef on the ship, and, the other two were just a pair of soldiers that worked together that were traveling as well. And it just put them in a situation, put the action at them so that they have to be, like you said, rely on each other right away. If you don't want to go through all the complex background of how do you know him and her and him, what's the web between you all. It can work out. It's great. It's great if you want to do that sometimes. But sometimes just toss them in the deep end, and it's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So, to the question, if a DM who has played a module they have DM'd before and are now playing as a player, what ways can you spice it up so that metagaming can be avoided?
I mean,
That's really hard.
Yeah.
you have to go in the right mindset.
Yeah.
I usually, when I'm playing a game and I'm not heavily involved, or it's a campaign that I've already run through or something like that, I will specifically make a character that doesn't interact in that way. Right? I'm not going to be the leader of the group. I'm going to let somebody else do that.
I think a lot of that goes to the honor system for the DM who's played it.
Yep.
You gotta. I make like a dumb character, the meat field. I just kind of sit there and take orders and be the comic relief or whatnot. I'm not going to be the personality.
You can even work with another player's character, right? And say, hey, maybe we want to do a of mice and men sort of situation here.
Yeah, Lenny and George. Yeah, exactly.
We want to do like a Lenny and George situation where, you're kind of like the one in charge, and I'm the one who's like, and I just charge in,
Yeah,
I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, it's basically honor system for the DM who's played it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Another good question: how do you determine CR in an encounter?
That's the asking the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Like, do you guys use encounter builders, or
I
do
do.
you
I use an encounter builder. I go to almost exclusively now one called Kobold Fight Club, and it lets you plug in everything: number of players, number of levels, minimum and maximum CR you're looking for, environment, everything, and play around with it just to get an idea of what a medium encounter should be, and it'll tell you whether it's medium, easy, difficult. And if I have to, I'll also strip out the skins on those monsters and reskin them, of course. But I'll get the statistics I need for the encounter and just kind of build it that way. And it's a little lazy, but it's easy math that way.
Yeah. I don't do that. I homebrew all my encounters, and oh gosh, my answer is complicated, so I don't want to go over complicated with it. But basically, once again, practice. Through years of practice, I'm at the point now where I can see a group of players or their characters. I can know what they can do. I know how many attacks they get and how much damage they can do with those attacks. And I can put them up against something knowing almost the exact outcome of the battle, right? Not exactly, but have a really general idea. I think for newer people, Kobold Fight Club is really good. Just understand one of the big things, and I think players run into this problem a lot. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition in particular is very balanced around action economy. And what action economy is basically how many actions each person gets in a round. So if you have 4 players, all level 5 getting multiple attacks a turn against one monster that's like higher level, that's supposed to be a deadly challenge for those 4 players, but only gets 1 or 2 attacks a turn, these 4 players will wipe the floor with it because they just get so many more attacks in, so many more things they do. So my suggestion for encounters is look for something, use like Kobold Fight Club, and just keep an eye on, just understand the lower number of actions your monsters have, almost always the less of a threat they are to your players.
Unless your players use Hold Person.
Yeah.
Or Hold Monster, in which case
now
you just hope the dice don't screw you over.
Because that's like save or suck spells. If they save against that spell, that's
the way the dice goes. Yeah, it happens.
If it succeeds, it's awesome.
Also,
the dice are always a huge factor.
This goes to practice. Learning to read the room in the middle of the fight. If it's looking too easy, if it's looking too hard, you're the DM. You don't always have to read the dice as rolled, or you can shave hit points off the critter if it's too easy, too hard. If they're like 1 hit point away from killing it on that last blow, but they're all like on death's door and they're not having fun, kill the creature. But if they're having fun and they want the threat, go with it. I think it's a matter of reading the room and giving them what they want.
Yeah, slog is real. Right, because it can get that way.
Mm-hmm.
Big, heavily armored creatures. Those fights can go on for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing.
Sometimes you gotta cut it.
I'm pretty new when it comes to encounters. It's always something that I've been struggling with, and I've noticed that if I put more things to fight as opposed to bigger enemies, that feels better. I feel like you get that satisfying crunch when you kill a goblin or you kill an orc. And there's 4 more orcs, and okay, well, we're not as stressed, and we can still fight, but we're still in danger. And I feel like having more things closer to them individually helps a lot, as opposed to one bad guy. Because every time I've thrown one bad guy, they just
wipe the floor with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or
I
put a situation. I've had one where I've scared the crap out of my party, unbelievably, because I put something that is unbelievably horrifying, and every time they've looked or asked, it's just hide, do not run, do not do this. You can't get away if it sees you, and it changes the conflict to an aversion of the fighting. So you can use that too. I feel like you don't need to you have to fight something. Sometimes if you scare the crap out of your party, they don't want to fight whatever you're putting there.
All right, and that's how we're going to wrap it
is
up.
always really good too. Like
Yeah,
having
variety is good.
monsters in a combat.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that is time for us. A little bit over. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody listening, it's dinner time. Go get something to eat. Get up, walk around. We've got about an hour before the next thing goes, so take that time and relax.
What is the
I know
next
you're
thing?
at home. I believe it is a live show. Let me double check the schedule. Yes, it is the Lawful Stupid live show starting at 7.
Okay, cool.
So you guys have about an hour, a little bit less than, to go do that. So yes. For anybody who wants to join us for a game of Quiplash, that will be entertaining, I am sure. Everybody wave bye.
Play outward and watch. Bye. Oh,